great name, oh condemned, feel no shame at the sound of your great name. Every fear, it has no place at the sound of your great name. The enemy, worthy is the Lamb that was slain for us. The Son of God and man, you were high and lifted up, and all the world will praise your great name. All the weak find their strength at the sound of your great name. Hungry souls receive grace at the sound of your great name. The fatherless, they find their rest at the sound of your great name. Jesus, worthy is the Lamb that was slain for us. The Son of God and man, you were high and lifted up, and all the world will praise your great name. Redeemer, my healer, Lord Almighty, my Savior, defender, you are my King. Redeemer, my healer, Lord Almighty, my Savior, defender, you are my King. Jesus, worthy is the Lamb that was slain for us. The Son of God and man, you were high and lifted up, and all the world will praise your great name. You are high and lifted up, and all the world will praise your great name. Your great name. Your great name. Jesus, worthy is the Lamb, high and lifted up, Son of God and man.
You have received, this is a good time, you know, it's summer, and so summer at Mosaic means seats in the sanctuary in second service. So we have a few extra seats for people, and we're glad. We're kind of shoulder to shoulder, but not as bad as we are during the school year. So it's good to see everybody here. We have one little piece of business, and that is, did everybody see the little handout with the nominating committee report, or we call it the ministry placement here? This is your first reading. The reason that we do this is that we let you look at it, and believe it or not, the real reason we do it is if you have an objection to any of these people holding office, you have 1 week to come and let me know. I know that sounds really harsh, but that's the way it's done. So if you have an objection to any of those officers, you need to come and let me know this week. You call me or call the church, send an email to the church, and we'll deal with the issue, whatever your issue is. It can't be you just don't like them. Has to be something more than that. And if you'll give me that word, then we'll take care of it. Now, I want to talk to you today about windows. How many of you have heard of the 10-40 window? A good number of you. 1040 window. It's defined as latitude north 10 to latitude north 40, and it's a kind of a trapezoidal rectangular spot on the planet over in Asia and the Middle East where the gospel has simply not been able to penetrate because of existing governments and existing religions. And it's a tough time, and Elder Lonnie is an expert on it because he helps them to build the Adventist World Radio antennas that blast the gospel into the 1040 window. And so 1040 is a big window that we Christians, and it's not just Seventh-day Adventists, it's Christians worldwide talk about. The 1040 window is the place that has traditionally and historically been impenetrable to the gospel. There's another window that I want to talk to you about today, and that's a window that we've found from a lot of research. Now, this is not just one survey. This is survey after survey by the Barna Group, the Pew Studies, and all the rest. And it's been done over the last 15 years. And here is the percentage. 85% of Christians. Do you think that's a pretty overwhelming majority? Would you like to be, if you were running for office, would you like to have 85% of the vote? That'd be kind of a mandate, wouldn't it? So 85% of Christians became Christians between the ages of 4 and 14. Okay, sink in for a minute. Ages of 4 and 14 is 85%. After the age of 30, it's only 4%. And I'll tell you, we Seventh-day Adventists are better than most churches at that after 30 group because we aggressively go after that after 30 group with what we call traditional evangelism. And so we are better than most Christian churches at the after 30 group, but the 14, 15 to 30 group will surprise you. 10%. So that means from the beginning of high school until people turn 30, only 15%. Only 10%. So over the age of 14 is only 14% of Christians. Now that's a window, isn't it? 4 to 14. What do we call that window? We call that window VBS. Isn't that who we serve in VBS, 4 to 14? That's exactly our constituency for VBS. We call it 4 to 14. And you know, a couple of years ago, when we asked the Buso, I call them the Busos. They're not the Busos. It's Buso and Busto. I don't know. They have different last names. It's very confusing to me. But apparently in Chile, that's the way it's done, I guess. So we asked them to do children's ministries. And of course, they said, what is children's ministries? And we said, we don't really know. It has to do with VBS and some other stuff. And they said, what other stuff? And we said, we don't know. And so they've been inventing it over the last 2 years. And they've been doing VBS. And with the helpers that you see in T-shirts and some that you don't see in T-shirts, they've been doing a tremendous job. We have other names for that window. We call it VBS, but we also call it some other things. One of the things that we call it is kindergarten. Another that we call it is primary. Another that we call it is juniors. Another we call it is early teens. And if you are, where did she go? There, Marlene Spady, you call it elementary school and junior high. And we call it adventures and we call it pathfinders. I've got that right here on my notes. Thank you. We have names. We have our inside names for the 4 to 14 window, but they're adventurers, they're pathfinders, they are elementary school students, they are even kindergarten students, and then they're kindergarten, primary, junior, and early teen students. And the bottom line is this: 85%, if the numbers don't change radically, 85% of the future of this church is being made in that window right now. If you want to look at the church in 25 years, look around at the 4 to 14s right now in this room. That is the future of our church. And we know it's the future of our family because I'm already over the hill. we got a lot of us, we're already kind of past the prime, and we've got to look for those who are going to replace us, and they're 4 to 14 right now. So there's a text in the Bible. Let's turn to Matthew chapter 18 at the first of the chapter. We're not talking about discipline. That's the end of Matthew 18. At the first of chapter 18, it says that the disciples came to Jesus and they said, "Who will be the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" When I was in high school, I don't know if anybody else remembers, okay, do elementary school students get much mail? No. When you get into high school, you start to get mail, right, ladies? Okay, if you take the SAT, you get a lot of mail, right? If you do well on the SAT, you get a lot more mail. I don't know. And so you start to get mail. And one of the things I got in the mail when I was a teenager was a little invitation, a promotion from an organization, I don't even know if they exist anymore, called Who's Who Among American High School Students, right? Now, you don't realize until later that it's a total vanity pitch, and what they're trying to do is get you to buy the book that has your name in it. And it's $45 in those days for that book. And I thought, $45, I could use a lot of better ways than having a book with my name in it. I'll bet that book's at the library. I'll just go to the library, look at my name, know that it was there, and be happy and keep my $45, which I did. And I'm glad that I did that in retrospect. I think that was a wise decision. People always want to know who's the greatest. So we have books called Who's Who in American Business. Who's Who in colleges and universities in America. Who's Who in American law schools. We've seen all those lists, right? In fact, some of us in this room have been on those lists. Let me ask you a question. Has anybody here ever subscribed to People magazine? You can go ahead and admit it. We're here. We're friends. It's family, right? I don't know how we got subscribed. We haven't subscribed to People magazine for 30 years, but somehow we got on a list. I'm waiting for the bill. Haven't seen the bill yet. I get a People magazine every day, I think. It seems like it's every day. Have you ever subscribed to a weekly lately? It just seems like every day, doesn't it? So we get People magazine. And what is People magazine except a who's who? It gossip? Well, you'd have to read. See, I just look at the pictures. So who's who? It's a who's who. And all the other, top 10, top 100. And since the internet has come into full swing, top 10 and top 20 and top 100 lists are everywhere, aren't they? They're always pushing, you'll not believe who's in this top 10 list, and number 4 shocked me. Anybody get those emails? Yeah. So we have all these, everybody wants to know who's going to be the greatest. It is absolutely wired into our DNA, so we shouldn't be surprised when the disciples came to Jesus and said, oh Jesus, who's going to be the greatest? And calling a child to himself, he had the child stand in their midst and said, now you got to understand, in this sentence, the yous are plural, okay? Anybody here a non-native speaker? Okay, so yous are plural in this one, so I'm going to make them plural. He said, truly I say unto y'all, unless y'all turn y'all's lives around and become like young children, y'all will never enter the kingdom of heaven. So he's making that plural. He's saying, you disciples, you need to understand that unless you become like this child, you're not even going to get there, let alone be the greatest. So what does it mean to be like a little child? Sometimes little children can't talk. Maybe that's it. You got to be quiet, right? Sometimes they stumble and fall. Maybe that's it. What it really means to be a child in this context, he said, humble yourselves. What does a child know that we have forgotten? A child knows that he's not in control. That's what children know. Now, I have one that's maturing to the point that she can now make cookies by herself. Now, she doesn't really like putting her hand in the oven, but the rest of the cookie making is pretty good and pretty easy, and I don't like her putting it in the oven either because I prefer the dough. Now, if you don't use eggs in your dough, it's safe to eat cookie dough. There's nothing there that has to be cooked. okay? So we have a bowl of dough in the refrigerator, and we use a spoon. And it's better. Just trust me, it's better than the cookies. You cook them, there's a 50% chance you're going to burn them anyway, right? There's no chance of burning them in the fridge. So, and in the fridge, they get nice and hard and chewy, and they're delicious. So just remember that for your future if you like cookies like I like cookies. Okay. He says you have to humble yourself. Children know that they are not in control. Children know that they need help. Children know that they are not the decision makers in their own lives. And the question is, are we as Christians becoming like little children? Are we recognizing that we're not in control, that we can't do it ourselves? See, here's the problem. As we get older, we get much, much better at things beyond making cookies. We get better at being able to control situations, at being able to control ourselves sometimes, some of us. And we get better at being able to make money so that we don't need other people so much. And then we get really better at manipulating relationships. Is that not a nice way to put that? It's true, isn't it? We get better at manipulating relationships for our own gratification. That's kind of ugly, but it's true. And as we get better at all these things, we lose our humble neediness of knowing that we're not in charge. And Jesus said, look at this child. This child can't get up and leave the house when he wants to. He can't make himself food. He can't get a job. He can't do any of those things. He can't do anything to take care of himself. And I want you people to be just like this little child. I want you to recognize that everything you want and everything you need comes from me. So he says, truly I say to you, unless y'all turn your lives around and become like young children, y'all will never enter the kingdom of heaven. There's a saying that says, God has no grandchildren. Do you know what that means? It means that we're not going to enter God's kingdom on anybody else's coattails. Each of us has to make our own decision. Now, right in the middle of this, Jesus said, whoever humbles himself like this child, this person is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. He doesn't say, whoever humbles this person, humbles themselves like this little child will be in the kingdom of heaven. He say, you ask who's the greatest? The greatest is the most humble. I'm telling you who the greatest is. And this begins a really interesting series in this text of 3 whoever statements. Whoever is humblest will be the greatest. Number 1. Number 2, whoever is changing the subject radically, because he's just changed from telling them what they ought to be like. And then he says, whoever welcomes one such child as this in my name welcomes me. Now he's talking about something totally different, isn't he? He's not talking now about fixing yourself. He's now talking about what he wants us to do for the 4 to 14 window. Make no mistake, that's who he's talking about. He says, look, there are children around you, and I want you to receive them as if you were receiving me. I want you to treat them like they're little me's. Are we doing that? How many of you love to work with children? How many of you not so much? I see these monkeys up here. Aren't they cute? They're just charming. It's just a shame that they're so impermanent. The one out in the fellowship hall has gotten a little flaccid. But these are still cute, and they're still bright, and they're shiny, and they're fun, aren't they? Do you think Pastor Steve does balloon animals for his own amusement? I hope not. I hope not. I have a suspicion that Pastor Steve took up balloon animals for the amusement of the window. That there are a lot of people in this family that like balloon animals. And they're not Pastor Steve's age. but they are the future of our church. And so the question is, have you taken up any balloon animal courses lately? Maybe Steve ought to give us all balloon animal courses. I don't know. Maybe there's something else. Maybe you need to learn a magic trick or two for the kids. Maybe you need to learn the songs that they like to sing. Maybe you need to lead their song singing. Maybe you need to be in their classroom. How much are we doing for these little ones? Because he says very clearly, whoever welcomes one child such as this in my name welcomes me. Wow, that's pretty sobering, really. And then the third whoever statement is a cautionary one. This one gets ugly. He says, whoever causes one of these little ones to believe me, and that's a very awkward English sentence. In Greek, the word for causing the one to sin or to stumble is a word that means trap. And the Greek word is scandalizo. It means scandalize. Whoever, he says, scandalizes one of these little ones who believe in me, it would be better for him. This is a threat, by the way, in case you hadn't caught this. This is a kind of a threat or a curse. It would be better for him that a large millstone be hung on his neck and he be drowned in the depths of the sea. Okay, now the picture, the word large millstone in the Bible in this particular setting actually is called a donkey millstone. So we were in New Mexico, and the millstones they use there are about the size of a little loaf of bread, right? And they do this with it. And you can hold it in one hand. That's not the kind of millstone this is talking about. We think of those great big millstones where they have two flat stones that crush grain one against the other, but you really have to have mechanical power to make that kind of a millstone turn because there's too much friction, right? Paul, too much friction, right? Work it out. Okay, so he'll tell you exactly how many pounds of friction it would take based on the coefficient of friction and all the rest. But anyway, we won't go there. The ones that the donkeys used was a millstone about the size of the chair you're sitting in, but of course it would weigh more. And it would have a big hole in the middle, and a log would go through the hole. And then the grinding surface would be a round tray-like stone, and it would have a large tree trunk coming out of the middle, and the tree trunk of the donkey stone going through the donkey stone would come out there, and the donkey would be at that end, and he would walk around, and that stone would then roll in a circle around in that little round tray. Okay, so that's how it looked. I was going to bring you a picture of one, but I figured I could bore you better by telling you about it. So the point is, it's big, it's heavy, and it has a gigantic log-sized hole in the middle. So Jesus said, it would be better for you to have that hole, that millstone put around your neck like a collar. And then you should try to swim. Good luck. These days we call it concrete galoshes, right? Maybe that was a different generation still, I don't know. Anyway, and that you drown in the depths of the sea. See, the bottom line here is that we have a duty to these little children. And we have a shepherd's duty to the little children. What does a shepherd know that sheep need? Sheep need to be led. Sheep need to be fed. And sheep need to be protected. Right? So sheep need to be led. What are you doing to lead children? What does leadership look like? Does anybody know? Leadership. What does it look like? Leadership is living as if you believed what you profess. Are we living as if we believe what we profess? We read the scriptures. We believe the scriptures, right? And the scriptures say that people who do not submit to the Holy Spirit and to his sanctification in their lives are going to continue sinning, and they're going to wind up where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth, right? Do we believe that? Are we acting like we believe that? Are we submitting to the Holy Spirit and letting God transform us? See, leadership means letting people see what God has done for us. He says a city cannot be hid. It sits on a hill, gives light to everybody around. Now, what's really interesting about that is what does that leadership look like? You know, we have some odd leadership problems. I have a leadership problem. Marilyn and I argue about it all the time. I submit myself to be led by this lady in my phone that tells me how to get places. And she says, but you already know how to get there. Why would you turn that on? And I say, well, she might know a better way. Leadership. Do we know where we're going? You see, that's the problem. We have to know where we're going, and we have to know where we are in order to find the directions to get there. Do you know where you're going? This last November, there was a really interesting deal. There was a fella that was flying a 747. It's called a Dream something. What was it called? A Dream Lifter. It's the world's currently largest cargo aircraft. It holds 600,000 pounds of cargo. It takes 9,200 feet of runway to land and take off. And he was supposed to land at one airport, and he was confused about where he was going, and he landed on a 5,200-foot strip. They had to completely unload the aircraft in order to get it taken off again. There was no way it could take off on that full. So they had to unload it, pack it all on trucks, take it to his destination, and then they had to come have an expert pilot fly it out of that airstrip because there was no way you can take off a Dream Lifter full of cargo on 5,200 feet. He was confused about where he's going. Our children need to see us be clear about where we are going. And when I say our children, I mean our church family children, not just the ones that were born to you. The second thing we need to do is we need to teach our children. And the question is, what are we going to feed them? What are we going to teach them? And I'm going to suggest to you that we're going to teach them three things. We're going to teach them ideas. Those are the easy ones, you know? I'll tell you, my kids grew up different than your kids because my kids grew up around the kitchen table learning the ingredients for a Nazi meth lab. Probably your kids didn't. And learning the different punishment categories for the different crimes. We talk about all kinds of ugly things around our kitchen table, even contrary to their mother asking me not to. After we teach them ideas, you know, in addition to the bad ideas, we have to teach them good ideas, don't we? And in addition to the ideas, we need to teach them behaviors, don't we? Because children have a tendency to have bad behaviors. And we need to teach correct behaviors. And that's hard because, you know, teaching correct behaviors requires that whole thing called discipline. And that's really hard. It's really hard in the 21st century to know how to discipline. But the third thing we need to teach our children, we need to teach the children in this window, we need to teach them faith. Because it's not enough for children to learn their lessons. It's not enough for them to learn citizenship. They need to learn faith from us because there's nobody else going to teach them that. So we lead them and we feed them, and then we got to protect them. Jesus tells that story about being the gate. He's going to protect us by being the gate. And what's really interesting about that is that we in the United States of America, because we live in a relatively safe culture, have absolutely defaulted on this duty. What must we protect our children from? There's some easy ones. We all know that we have to protect our children from their own immaturity, right? Children do stupid stuff, right? They want to stick the wire in the plug in the socket in the wall, right? So we protect our children from their own immaturity of not knowing the best from the worst, not knowing the things that can affect them badly and adversely. We teach our children to avoid those things. And the second thing we need to teach them is we need to teach them and protect them from their own bad decisions. Kids always think they've got a great idea. And it's kind of a miracle that many children survive childhood because they have some decisions, and we see them on YouTube all the time now, right? This kid decides he's going to jump from one building to the next, and you see him splat on the pavement 2 stories below. On and on. Kids make really poor judgments, and it's our job as adults, not just parents, but as adults, to protect children from their bad decisions. But I want to tell you something that is the big overlooked one. We need to protect our children from predators. Oh, I know. Everybody wants to talk to me about pedophiles. I get all that. I'm actually a pedophile professional. I know all about that. I have prosecuted. I have defended. I know lots about pedophiles. I'm not talking about that. We all know that's a very small fraction of children will be affected by that. And we know we need to protect our children from that. Let me tell you what we really need to protect our children from. The predators in the media culture in the United States of America in the 21st century. We have great pipeline conduits of evil in our living rooms. And somebody has to control the spigot on the pipeline. And that somebody can't be 4 to 14 years old. That somebody has to be you. We have children in this country who are being babysat by the television. Open cable connections. If you leave your child at home with an open cable connection, you are leaving your child with the devil, and it can't be any clearer than that. I'm telling you, it's as stark as it is, because the devil inhabits the channels of the cable television. We have to do better than that for our children. Our children cannot be left to the world's influence, because I'll tell you something. A child experiences one movie about witches and warlocks and devils and demons, and I don't care how much talking you do, you're adding wreckage to misery. You can't fix what a 2-hour slick production from Hollywood can mess up in your child's mind. We have to be ever vigilant and age appropriate to what exposure our children have to the media. The future of the church sits in this room. They are in the window. If you want to see what the future looks like, look through their eyes and see what they're looking at today. See what they're reading today. See what they're being taught today. And I want to say one thing about Marlene Spady. Yeah, you should stop talking and listen. I want to say one thing about Marlene Spady. She's the chairman of the NDAA school board, and we call the future the students at NDAA. Look at the statistics on those students. She'll give you the statistics. Those students are going to lead this church in the coming generation. And the question is, I'm a homeschool believer, right? Okay, I'm a homeschool believer because I don't believe God gave those children to anybody except their mother and me. And since their mother's a better teacher, she gets to teach them. We have some great educators here. We have some great Seventh-day Adventist educators that work in public education. And I admire and respect what you guys do. I really do. I went to public school myself. I really appreciate what y'all do. I would not trust my children to a public school education in the 21st century if I had any choice in the world. Sorry to say it. I know we disagree on this subject, but I'm telling you, just because we have great Seventh-day Adventist educators in the public school system does not mean that your children are going to be safe there, because they are not going to be safe there. I admire Ben. You went all the way through. I'm glad for you. Followed in my footsteps. You're doing great. We're proud of you. But folks, the place for our children is where they're going to be taught ideas, beliefs, and faith. We need for our children to be protected. It is our job. It is nobody else's job, and the time is now, because there is a world of onslaught, of wrong ideas, of evil coming after your children right now. Now, that's pretty heavy stuff. I recognize that. I don't apologize for it because I'm only quoting Jesus. So when we quote Jesus, we don't have to apologize. It says, it would be better for him that a donkey millstone be hung on his neck and he be drowned in the depth of the sea. Woe to the world because of the causes of the scandals. For it is a necessity that scandals come. Nevertheless, woe to the person through whom they come. Today's kids are saying, will somebody please love me? And I'll tell you right now, in this church family, I see people like David's son who stay with kindergarten after his kids are out of there. And it warms my heart. Amen. I see people like Pastor Steve who has no little children, but he loves the little children. Amen. I see people all around us who teach. Dominique doesn't have anybody in the primary department, but she teaches in the primary department. We are blessed by that, but we need our children to be blessed by you too. So, Jesus says in this text two things. Number one, you need to be like a little child, and you need to recognize that all help is from above and not from yourself. And number two, you need to care for the little children as if they were me, and you need to protect them from this evil world. Now the question is, what does that look like where the rubber meets the road? And the answer is, God will tell you if you open your eyes to these little children. Did you see the singing group up here? Did you see these two teenage girls leading the singing group? It was beautiful. It's beautiful. That's the path and the road to the future of the church. God's kingdom is being developed right here, right now at VBS. Can I pray for you? Heavenly Father, as we want to follow you and we want to do your will, we ask that you would show us how to serve this age group, serve the future of the church, to bring the future of the church into the leadership that you have already designed for them to have. Please help us to teach them. Help us to lead them by example, and help us to protect them from the evil one. We know that this is your will. We know that this is what you want for these children. And we ask that every one of them will be saved, that not one will be lost, and that all of these children will be with us in your kingdom for eternity. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen.